When dark comedy Dead to Me premiered on Netflix, it seemed to come out of nowhere and became one of the most talked about and binged series of the year. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, here with the show's creator, Liz Feldman. Liz, there is nothing like this on TV. It's almost impossible to describe without giving too much away. But in a nutshell, I could probably say it follows Jen, played by Christina Applegate, and Judy, played by Linda Cardellini. They meet at a grief support group and become friends, but then I don't want to say anything else. Like, where did the idea come from?
You know, it's funny. In some ways, I don't really know where it came from. I just know where I was emotionally when I came up with it. And, you know, the truth is I was going through a really dark time. I had just turned 40. And on the day I turned 40, my cousin died unexpectedly of a heart attack. And interestingly enough, today is my 42nd birthday. So that was 2 years ago. Today, thank you. So that was 2 years ago today. And at the same time, I was going through ongoing fertility struggles. I had been at that point like trying to get pregnant for about 5 years. So it was just a bit of a dark time in my life. And I had been set up on a pitch meeting about a week after my cousin's funeral. And at this meeting, I was told, hey, you don't have to have ideas. Come in. They're going to pitch you ideas for a 2-female lead show. And if something bounces off, you know, great. And if something comes of it, wonderful. And so I went completely unprepared to this meeting. They said, you know what, we're sick of our ideas. Do you have any? And I really honestly did not. And that's terrible. As a professional writer, I should always have something in my back pocket. I truly did not. So, you know, there's a lesson there probably. However, I just sort of sat there and took it all in and thought, well, I don't know, maybe one of them's a widow and she meets this other woman in a grief group, and maybe that woman isn't telling the whole truth about why she's there, and something like that. And they were like, they kind of just like looked at me and they were like, we like that. So I kept developing this idea, and I think for the first time allowed myself to maybe make a show that could really be about something and have substance and, you know, discuss like issues that were important to me. I come from the multi-camera world where I had always been basically writing, you know, dick jokes for a living, quite frankly. And, you know, and just in turns, those are the kind of shows that I watch. Thought, well, what if I could write a show like that, but it could also be funny? And that's sort of where it came from.
Yeah, you know, it's like, I mean, by the way, there's nothing at all wrong with dick jokes, but, you know, I think it's really fascinating that this show is actually really quite deeply personal one for you, isn't it? And that's something really, I mean, how has that been to put something on screen that is so deeply personal to you?
You know, it's certainly been a change. You know, a lot of times I feel very removed, even though in the past I've certainly written things that were autobiographical, but this is actually not autobiographical. There's no facts that are the same, but the feelings are all real. And every writer in the room came to that room with real stories and heartbreak and grief and their own fertility struggles. And I think hopefully what you feel when you watch the show is there's a lot of real heart and a lot of real personal stuff in there for people to connect with. And, you know, that was a wonder. It was sort of a beautiful thing, you know, to be able to do that. But yeah, there were definitely days on set when we were shooting certain scenes that I had to walk away and sort of just remove myself because, you know, it's weird. You know, also Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini are so good. Like, they're just such talented, you know, authentic and just beautiful actresses that they would be portraying something that, you know, did feel very reflective of my own life. And it would be really, I would like sort of be mesmerized by their performance and then be like, oh, I need to go cry a little bit.
Wow.
And that's sort of what it's like.
That's fascinating because the show often it shifts quite suddenly in tone. I read on some other articles where they've said, or Netflix has said it's a traumedy, which I think is quite funny. So it's often laugh out loud funny, and then it shifts to deeply emotional, and then it goes super dark and twisted, which is totally like I just ate it up in one or two sittings. It was amazing. How difficult is it to strike that balance though? Because it could have been totally off and like an inorganic or not authentic, but it wasn't. You actually were able to stick the landing. How difficult is that?
Thank you so much. We just sort of like, we sort of worked from our guts in a way, and really wrote from a place of authenticity. And, I know that it is sort of weird, like you are laughing, but then something dark happens. And the truth is that that's how I see life. That's how I personally experience the twists and turns of life. Like, I was just away with my best friend, who very much, Jen and Judy are kind of us. And, we were at one point talking about the death of a family member and in tears. And then, we just sort of like, we just like observed something weird that was going on and started laughing. And I just thought in that moment, like, oh, this is just my personal perspective. This is my lens through which I see the world and which I process life. It's like things are really dark, especially right now. The sort of feeling, especially in this country, there's sort of a dark feeling, no matter what side you're on. And I can't help but always sort of search for the little bit of light that can crack through, and things to laugh about. It's just a coping mechanism. So we felt like we never wanted to force the humor. The humor had to come from a real place. And that the twists and turns too, the dark stuff had to feel like it was organic, like it was happening for a reason, not just happening because we needed a twist, So it was a lot of gut checks, and and then of course, like in editing, it's just making sure that if you're on the ride and it feels right. And just when you're just like a fucking roller coaster, you're like, oh shit, and that's sort of how we did it.
Yeah, and coupled with that, this show kept me guessing constantly. I know other people when I was like, you need to watch the show, then they didn't, and come back and be like, oh my God, can you believe what the hell happened in that episode? It's really unpredictable, like life, and quite shocking, like life. But how hard is it to pull off? Did you map it out carefully? What's the process? Because they all seem to land like. Sometimes I thought, am I stupid? I didn't see that coming. But I think you're just every episode there's a new one. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like my experience of life is my expectations are always being subverted. So just when you think one thing is going to happen, and you're like, of course, of course X, Y, or Z is going to happen. In my experience, well, it's always the exact fucking opposite thing that happens. And, so I think we just tried to think about all possibilities and, what felt like a way to subvert expectation and a way to keep people guessing. But again, still feeling like this could really happen in this world. This is not a sci-fi show. This is not a fantasy. It's not Game of Thrones. There's no dragons. It is still life, and it's people. They are, and I'm sure this has been used many times, but it's true here too. They're ordinary people sort of living in an extraordinary circumstance. And, that's just how we, always approached it. And I've like lost track of the question, but I hope I've answered it.
You did. What's most important? I think this is a great example of casting. If the two women had been casting correctly, this show would have been a complete nightmare. It wasn't. Like it would have been a horrible thing to watch. But no, I'm kidding. There's still a lot of other good things about this show, but the casting was hugely important, don't you think? How did you get Christina and Linda to come on board? And I mean, you just really hit the jackpot with those two.
I literally use those exact words like every day. I would be on set watching them, just soaking in their incredible chemistry. And I was just, and they had never met before we cast them. And, with Christina, obviously both of them I had been fans of for different reasons and for many years. And with Christina, I had actually been developing another show for her. So we had a prior relationship. So we hired, we were lucky enough to get picked up. We hired these incredible cast directors, Sherry Thomas, Russell Scott, Sharon Bialy. And I hired them. First of all, they're great people, but I hired them because they cast Barry, and they cast Better Call Saul, and they cast, Breaking Bad, and Handmaid's Tale. And I thought I love their choices because they don't always go for the obvious choice. They go for the right choice. They don't just go for the big shiny name. They go for the appropriate person. And I just trusted them so implicitly. And literally our first meeting, the first name they brought up for Jen was Christina. And when that thing happens, when you get the chills after somebody, like something just feels right. I had that thing where I was like, of course. And once Christina signed on, it was about finding that counterpart. Who's going to be able to be as formidable as her and play off of her, but also be a contrast? So it was actually Netflix who brought up Linda Cardellini, and I was a huge fan of hers, especially on Bloodline. And I really thought of her as a more dramatic actress because I just wasn't as familiar with her comedic stuff. And frankly, I don't feel like she'd ever really been given an amazing opportunity to show her comedic chops, like, in the way that we now know she has them. And when I met with her for the first time, I was just so taken with her humanity. Like, she just has such warmth about her. She herself is such an endearing person. And I thought that is exactly what Judy needs to be. She needs to be lovable beyond logic. You have to be rooting for this person even when it feels like you shouldn't. And she has that. She embodies that quality. And, you literally, all you could do is sort of look at their pictures side by side before they meet and just roll the dice and hope it's going to work out. And in this case, like, we just hit the jackpot. We really did. And upon their first meeting, it was just instant chemistry. And I was, huge sigh of relief, but, it's just been an amazing partnership with them.
Yeah, like, I think you just hit the nail on the head, because I've been trying to explain that why it is what it is about the Judy character that I was taken with, and I think it's her likability, her relatability. There's something about Linda, and I think without that, Judy would have been maybe a more brittle character, or someone that we can't relate to. So I think that's super important. It brings me to this. You said earlier that a lot of the crew, especially the writers and yourself, brought a lot of personal stuff to the story to give it that empathy. I know that Jen in the show has gone through a double mastectomy. Talk us through that aspect of the character and how it hit close to home on set. Well,
that actually was an idea that Christina brought to us. And we were actually already in production. So the script was written, and she called me one weekend and she said, there's a reason why this marriage fractured. There's a reason why, he went another way and something happened. And, we just started talking about Jen's backstory. And she said, what if she had a double mastectomy? And I thought it was incredibly generous of her and like insightful. And like, it was just, as soon as she said that, first of all, it really does make sense for the character, and the character is played by her. And Christina really has gone through that in her life. And, as soon as she brought it up, I was like, I'm going to find a way to put this, to weave this into our show, because it is, first of all, a really resonant and relatable thing to, have gone through. And it's just, and to Christina's credit, she's like, I never see this. I never see this on TV. I never see this in movies. You never see women, after the fact, after they make this empowering choice, to save their own lives and, and be celebrated for it, and, show all the sides of it. And so I think it was very powerful for her to work through that. And, you'd have to talk to her directly, because I don't want to put words in her mouth, but like, it was a really incredible and like palpable moment. Anytime we were shooting anything regarding that, it was it was pretty incredible.
And then to couple with that, the show doesn't shy away from being from a female perspective. It's empowering for that reason alone, but the women on the show are often at odds. They don't have to be likable. In other words, they're not passive, they're larger than life. And you don't have to be a woman to appreciate that either. So because it spoke to men, women, and people of various backgrounds. How refreshing is it though to bring those kinds of characters to the screen and to life, and to spotlight the dynamic between these two women?
I mean, it's, you know, it's been like the creative like gift of my life to be able to write two complex, flawed, imperfect, you know, women who are not all good and not all bad, but, you know, like everyone I know, this like mixed bag of human, but deeply flawed, troubled, you know, hilarious, all the different things. And, you know, to not be limited and to not be stuck in a in sort of under the confines of like the person has to be likable, like we have to be able to cheer for them at all times, which, you know, is a little bit of a network kind of paradigm. You know, how do we make this person an every person? And the truth is that like an every person is fucked up, and every person has a lot of like skeletons in their closet and secrets and things they don't even want to admit about themselves. And you know, it was incredibly refreshing and cathartic, you know, I think for me and for all the writers to be able to write these like imperfect women, and to see now how it has connected with an audience is like totally blows my mind, but it's also like extremely validating, because we need more characters, especially more female characters that are not just like the mom, the good mom, you know, not just the wacky neighbor, not, you know, these archetypes that are just impossible to find in real life, you know. And so it's just been really, really incredibly fulfilling to be able to bring these women to life.
Yeah, and I know you've talked about this in other interviews, but for anyone watching this who doesn't know, why do we never see Jen's dead husband?
You know, it was just a choice that we made from the very beginning. For me, this is a show that takes place very much in the present. You know, these are two women that are dealing with what is going on right now in front of them. And though, you know, obviously Judy is very haunted by her past, I wanted us to experience Ted through Jen and through Charlie and Henry. And, you know, he's dead. He's not here anymore. And so I personally didn't feel like I needed to explore who he was. It's not a show about Ted. It's a show about Jen and Judy. And it was just a choice. You know, I think also we've seen in some really lovely ways the show about someone who's lost another person, and that dead person is very much present, or they're even a ghost, or they're, you know, it just was a different way to explore death. And then I really wanted to feel his absence so that you could really resonate with Jen's feeling of his absence.
Well, you know what? It didn't even occur to me until afterwards when I'm like, you know what? We never saw the husband. Like, so that's something. It didn't even occur to me. So, yeah. Now, putting aside the question of whether season 2 is or isn't happening, where would the characters go? Because at the end I thought, okay, I'm good with this. I would love to see more, but I had closure. But do you have a plan?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, I do. Trust me, the characters can go places. I mean, you know, something that we were really interested in achieving by the end of season 1 was a bit of an evening of the score. You know, there's a role reversal essentially that has occurred, and you know, it is a show very much about grief, loss, forgiveness, friendship, and all of those themes are incredibly resonant at the end of this first season. So we have, I mean, the writers have a pretty fun, twisted, dark plan about how to deal with season 2.
That's hugely exciting. And the final comment I'll make is
we are still waiting for an official pickup,
which is just insane. Like I don't know what the bloody holdup is, but okay, look, that's over my pay grade.
Me too.
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a huge fan of Karen, the Mexican lasagna lady. I just love her. I need more of her in my life. Where the hell did that come from?
Well, you know, I mean, she in some ways is a bit of an archetype, you know, now that I've said, like, you know, she is the distant friend who wants to be helpful helpful, but within her own, comfort zone.
Yeah.
And wants to feel like she did the right thing by bringing over the food that nobody wants, but, doesn't ask the right questions, doesn't offer the right responses, and generally makes Jen feel more alone, And I felt like, having gone through my own grief and loss and watching very close loved ones go through that, like, that is very much a type of person, who means well, but just doesn't quite have the emotional intelligence to really be there for you. And first of all, Susie Nakamura is a brilliant comedian, and she brought so much to that role that I wasn't even expecting, and which is why we ended up bringing her back, honestly, because we were like, we need more Karen. And I do have plans that you will see her again.
Oh, that's a relief. Thank God for that. Liz, thank you so much for your time, and most importantly, happy birthday.
This was a fun way to celebrate my birthday.
Absolutely. To all Dead to Me fans,
Thanks,
go to goldderby.com right now. Make your predictions. Compete against us know-it-alls. Before you go, click subscribe and watch our great chats with top contenders just like Liz.